there. My name is Lauren Steinberg, and I am the CEO at Veterinarians International. We are an organization whose mission is to empower a global community of veterinarians caring for animals and our shared planet. I have been honored and am delighted the Global Listening Festival has asked us to participate. And today I'm here with our chief veterinarian, Dr. Jenna Wallace, and she has graciously offered to answer some questions for us today. So Jenna, if you want to just do a quick introduction and then we'll get started.
Hello, my name is Dr. Jenna Wallace. I'm the Chief Veterinary Officer for Veterinarians International, and I have worked in South Africa, the Caribbean, Mexico, and the United States, as well as here in Hawaii. And I have experience with marine mammals, cetaceans, stranding, and some zoo work, as well as other captive animals in the captive industry. But I am no longer in the industry, and look forward to sharing some things with you.
Terrific. Thank you, Dr. Jenna. All right, we're going to get started. First question, Jenna, do you listen to the various wildlife species you care for? Example, sound of discomfort. Is listening part of the observation process?
Listening is absolutely part of the process and how you care for these animals. For instance, dolphins, they have quite a few different type of vocalizations, and you can tell based on their pitch how they feel, if they hurt, if they're happy. Sometimes they literally sound like tweets, like tweet, tweet, tweet. And then if they're unhappy, I mean, they can almost make these deep guttural honky noises, and you know they're not happy with something. As far as localizing pain, you know, when a tiger is moving and you know that there's something, they have a history of kidney disease or something, or if you see the way they're crouching when they're walking, but it's not a stalking, it's more of a my abdomen hurts. So just like with a house cat, you can tell just by listening to the way they move. That's, I think, listening and observing is incredibly valuable to help you figure out what's going on with the animals.
Thank you. Do you listen to the ecosystem to treat animals? If yes, how do you do that? And is it different than listening to the individual animals?
You have to listen to your surroundings in the ecosystem because it can either help or harm the animal you're working with. For instance, marine mammals that strand, you really have to listen to the tide at the time, because when you pull those animals up, you need to be able to pull them up far enough on the beach and know when your tide is going to rise or lower, because you don't want them drowning or the water to come up into their blowhole if they're having issues breathing. So you have to listen to the tide, the color of the water. If it's a murky area, should we be concerned about sharks in the area? And then also predators, we need to listen to, the time of day. So for instance, some animals are easier to capture at night if you're trying to remove a snare, or in the event of, mass captures, or you have an animal, something needs to happen. You have to think about the season. So with capture myopathy in the wild, we really have to be careful about anything done and, in the hot summertime and then midday, because capture myopathy is so common. So you really need to listen to the weather. If you have something that's not emergency and life-threatening, but a storm is coming, you really need to work around that weather, what the footing's going to be like for yourself and the animal, so the animal doesn't slip during a capture. Because there's some species, such as giraffe, that if they have terrible footing because it's slippery and wet outside, that can be disastrous and end of life for them.
Thank you. And by listening to the ecosystem, does it help you at all identify and locate injured animals, injured wildlife?
If you know your area, it can definitely help. If for instance, strandings. So strandings, some, especially in the Hawaii island, there's a couple islands that they particularly strand more frequently, or beaches. So if you know that area, then you kind of know what you're working with. And as far as like wildlife, land wildlife, it can, if you know the watering hole, for instance, that can help. I'm really into marine mammal stuff. So here in Hawaii, knowing the area is important so like dolphins and whales, there's actually a person, the Cascadia Research Project, but they can identify. So when an animal strands here in Hawaii, I can take a picture of the dorsal fin and I can send it to him, and they can tell us whether these dolphins are pelagic or are they from Hawaii, are they from somewhere else, do we normally see these animals in this area, or and that really can help too, because that can tell us about our local ecosystem in the area.
And Jenna, what's pelagic?
Deep diving animals.
Okay. And you mentioned that there's certain islands that this happens more often. And why is that?
We're not quite sure. It could be the depth of, so like Maui, it's pretty deep pretty quickly. So Maui has quite a bit. Kauai tends to strand more. And then Oahu, not as frequently. But I do believe it probably has something to do with the topography and the depths surrounding the islands.
Thank you. So, what do you listen to in order to diminish the risk of disease movement, cross-species transition, and the development of novel pathogen-host relationships?
So we do have to take into account so for land animals specifically, movement, right? So when you go into a foot and mouth disease endemic area, you need to know that which one, if you're at an endemic area or if you're not. So if you're working on an animal in this area, you need to keep in mind your shoes, things like that, when you go into another area, if their status is different, just even traveling. So when you go into the bush and you're working and you're doing all sorts of things, and then you want to go back to America or somewhere, you need to be honest when you come in through the what is it called?
Customs.
Customs. So basically, be honest about your shoes and your boots, because they're going to want to disinfect them, although you should disinfect them yourself. But I've definitely seen individuals that you can tell that they've just came from a safari or something like that, and then but they don't say anything on customs. So that's something to think about as far as transmitting pathogens. And then the other thing with aquatics specifically, so when there's especially facilities that do rescue, for instance, there is one doctor potentially for that day that is assigned just to rescue, or that week, and then they do not intermingle or touch or do anything with any of the captive animals. And so there's a lot of biosecurity for things like that when you're working with rescue or wildlife animals. So we're constantly taking that into account, whether you're in the wild or you're at a facility and working with the wild.
That's really interesting. I never would have thought of that. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people go on safaris all of the time.
Yeah.
Talk about risk of disease movement. How many of those safaris? I mean, I've been on them. There was no education on, risk and doing due diligence or protocols, coming back into other areas. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's mainly the hunters that have actually been around the animals and been around, out in the areas on foot, really up close with these animals, or veterinary students when they do programs and they're actually putting their hands on the animals. Those are more high risk individuals.
Got it. Thank you. That's important. What can individual citizens do to help listen better to this message? Like, why is it so important that we listen to these species?
Well, I think everybody should really listen to as many opinions and ideas out there to really create a well-rounded opinion. I think talking to your peers, your colleagues, checking out our newsletter, checking out our website, following myself and others on social media. You can see some of these things firsthand. Down to the Wire is a great one to follow. You can see the poaching, you can see the snares, and then really sharing a lot of these things that may be difficult for people to see, but once they see it, they can understand it. So check out all of the things that Veterinarians International does, and check out some of us that are out and about doing some of the work we do.
Amazing. Thank you for doing the work you do, Jenna.
Thank you.
You're incredible. And thank you for taking some time today to answer some questions for the Global Listening Festival. Yeah, thank you so much.